David slammed Amelia's employee ID onto the reception desk. "You're fired." The plastic badge skidded across the polished counter and stopped at the feet of a young nurse. Conversations died instantly. Doctors froze in the hallway. Patients waiting to be seen looked up in confusion. David's voice echoed through the hospital lobby. "Security! Escort Nurse Amelia Williams out of this hospital immediately." The guards exchanged uncertain glances. Amelia had worked there for years. She had stayed late during emergencies, comforted grieving families, and never once received a complaint. Amelia looked at her husband without anger. "Are you certain this is the decision you want to make?" she asked quietly. David folded his arms. "I've never been more certain." She nodded once. "Then I'll leave." Without another word, she removed her hospital badge, placed it beside him, and walked toward the exit. Behind her, whispers spread through the crowd. What did she do? "I've never seen Mr. Carter this angry. I heard she challenged him during yesterday's meeting." David didn't look back. In his mind, authority meant never showing doubt. Before the story continues, if you enjoy emotional stories filled with unexpected twists and powerful lessons, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Outside, Amelia took a slow breath. The morning breeze brushed against her face, but it couldn't ease the ache in her heart. She wasn't hurt because she had lost her job. She was hurt because the man she loved had stopped listening long ago. 4 years earlier, David had been completely different. Back then, he was just a hard-working hospital administrator with big dreams and a kind heart. He treated every cleaner, nurse, and doctor with respect. He believed hospitals existed to heal people, not to impress wealthy donors. That was one of the reasons Amelia fell in love with him. She had never told him the truth about her family. Her grandfather had built Carter Memorial Hospital from a small community clinic into one of the finest medical centers in the state. Before his death, he transferred 65% ownership to Amelia. She had been shocked. "I don't know how to run a hospital," she had told him. "You'll learn," her grandfather replied with a gentle smile. "But first, you must understand the people who keep it alive." He made her promise to spend at least 1 year working as an ordinary employee before taking her place on the board. No special treatment. No expensive office. No title. If you can't serve alongside your employees, you'll never deserve to lead them. She kept that promise. Only the board chairman and the family's lawyer knew the truth. Everyone else believed she was simply Nurse Amelia Williams. Even after marrying David Carter, she continued using her maiden name at work. They both agreed it would prevent gossip and accusations of favoritism. For a while, everything worked perfectly. Then David received the promotion that changed everything. As hospital administrator, he suddenly had people praising every decision he made. Executives invited him to expensive dinners. Business partners complimented his leadership. Slowly, humility gave way to pride. He became impatient. He stopped asking questions. He started demanding obedience. Whenever Amelia gently challenged one of his decisions at home, he dismissed her concerns. "You don't understand management," he would say. She always answered calmly, "Maybe not. But I understand patience." Those conversations became arguments. The distance between them grew wider every week. Then strange things began happening around the hospital. Patients complained about broken equipment. Nurses struggled to find basic supplies. Doctors whispered that medications were arriving late. One evening, Amelia noticed a shipment of surgical gloves tearing apart far too easily. She checked the packaging. It carried the hospital's approved supplier label. But something felt wrong. She quietly collected one damaged glove and compared it with an older batch stored in another department. The quality was completely different. The next day, she spoke with a senior pharmacist. "Have you noticed anything unusual?" He looked around before answering. "Keep your voice down." "What is it?" "We've been receiving cheaper products for months." "Did anyone report it?" "They tried." "What happened?" "The reports disappeared." Amelia frowned. "Disappeared?" He nodded. Someone doesn't want questions asked. That evening, she stayed after her shift ended. Instead of going home, she visited the purchasing department. Most employees had already left. She noticed several boxes waiting for inventory. One invoice caught her attention. The numbers didn't make sense. The hospital had supposedly paid premium prices for medical equipment, yet the products being delivered were low-quality versions. Millions of dollars were missing. She quickly copied the invoice numbers into her notebook. Over the next 2 weeks, she quietly gathered more information. Different suppliers. Different departments. Same pattern. Inflated payments. Cheap equipment. Missing funds. Someone inside the hospital was stealing from the people it was meant to protect. She wanted to believe David had no idea. That night, after dinner, she placed the notebook in front of him. I need you to look at something. David barely glanced up from his laptop. Can it wait? No. He sighed and closed the computer. What is it? She opened the notebook. I think someone is committing fraud. His expression hardened. That's a serious accusation. I know. She showed him copies of the invoices. The hospital is paying for premium medical supplies, but we're receiving low-grade products. David studied the papers for a few seconds before pushing them back toward her. Where did you get these? I found them while checking inventory. You had no authority to investigate purchasing records. I wasn't investigating. I noticed patients were being affected. You should have reported your concerns through your department head. I tried. Nothing happened. David leaned back in his chair. Amelia, do you realize how damaging rumors like this can be? They aren't rumors. They're assumptions. They're evidence. His voice became firmer. Enough. She stared at him in disbelief. You're not even going to examine them. I trust my executive team. And you don't trust me. Silence filled the room. Finally, David stood. I have an early meeting tomorrow. He walked upstairs, leaving the notebook untouched on the table. Amelia looked down at the papers. For the first time since their marriage, she wondered whether the man she loved cared more about protecting his reputation than protecting the people depending on that hospital. Far away in another part of the city, the hospital's procurement director smiled as he received a phone call. The administrator didn't believe her, the voice said. He chuckled. Good. What should we do now? He looked out the window. Now we make sure she becomes the problem. David arrived at the hospital before sunrise. The moment he stepped into his office, his procurement director, Victor Hale, was already waiting outside with 2 department managers. Victor wore a worried expression. Sir, may I have a minute? David nodded. What happened? Victor closed the office door behind them. I'm afraid we have a serious issue. David frowned. What kind of issue? Victor hesitated, pretending to choose his words carefully. It's Nurse Amelia. David's face tightened. What about her? Several employees say she's been questioning management decisions. Questioning? Victor nodded. She's telling people the purchasing department is corrupt. David remained silent. Victor continued. People are beginning to lose confidence in leadership. One manager added, yesterday she even asked a pharmacist about supplier invoices. The second manager sighed dramatically. Staff are becoming nervous. David rubbed his forehead. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Victor leaned forward. I believe she's a good nurse, sir, but she's crossing professional boundaries. David looked through the glass wall of his office. Across the corridor, Amelia was comforting an elderly patient whose grandson was crying beside the bed. She smiled gently at the little boy. Within seconds, the child stopped crying. Even from a distance, David remembered why he had fallen in love with her. For a brief moment, doubt entered his mind. Then Victor spoke again. If this continues, the board may think you've lost control. That sentence struck David harder than anything else. He had worked too hard to earn his position. He couldn't allow anyone, even Amelia, to make him appear weak. "Leave this with me," David said. Victor smiled faintly. "I knew you'd make the right decision." As they walked out, Victor exchanged a secret glance with the two managers. Everything was going according to plan. Later that afternoon, Amelia entered David's office carrying another folder. "I found something else." David didn't even invite her to sit. "I told you yesterday to stop." She placed the folder on his desk anyway. "I can't." He looked at her. "You can't?" "No." She opened the folder. 3 patients almost died this week because faulty infusion pumps stopped working. David remained expressionless. "The serial numbers don't match the manufacturer's records." She slid photographs toward him. "These are counterfeit machines." David pushed the folder back. "Enough." Her voice cracked. "David, people could die. And you're accusing my executive team without proof." "I've brought you proof." "You've brought assumptions." "They're facts." "They're unauthorized documents." She couldn't believe what she was hearing. So protecting paperwork is more important than protecting patients. David stood. "This conversation is over." "It shouldn't be." "It is." She looked into his eyes. "I miss the man who used to care." For a second, his confidence faltered. But before he could answer, Victor knocked on the open door. "Sorry to interrupt." He looked at Amelia with fake sympathy. "I didn't realize you were here." Amelia quietly gathered her papers. As she walked past him, Victor smiled. A smile so small that only Amelia noticed. That was the moment she realized something. He wasn't afraid. He was comfortable. Far too comfortable. She stopped walking. "Mr. Hale." He turned. "Yes. If you're innocent." "I am." "Then you won't mind if the invoices are audited." His smile disappeared for half a second. Then it returned. "I welcome any audit." David immediately answered. "Good." Amelia looked at him hopefully. He continued. "I'll arrange one when appropriate." "When appropriate?" "After proper internal procedures." She shook her head. "There may not be time." Victor interrupted. "Sir, the afternoon executive meeting starts in 5 minutes." David nodded. "We're done here." Amelia walked away without another word. Victor watched her disappear down the hallway. Then he quietly closed David's office door. "Sir." "What now?" "I hate saying this." "Then don't." Victor sighed. "I think she's becoming emotionally unstable." David frowned. "What do you mean?" "She's obsessed." He lowered his voice. "Employees are starting to ask whether she's mentally fit for duty." David looked surprised. "I haven't heard that." "People are afraid to tell you." Victor placed several written complaints on the desk. "I wish they weren't true." David skimmed through them. Every complaint described Amelia as disruptive, argumentative, disrespectful. He had no idea Victor himself had written most of them and pressured others into signing. David closed the file. "This is disappointing." Victor nodded sadly. "I know you respect her." David quietly replied. "I did." Meanwhile, Amelia wasn't giving up. She visited the biomedical engineering department. An elderly technician named Mr. Lewis welcomed her. "You look troubled." "I need your help." She showed him photographs of the infusion pumps. He adjusted his glasses. "Oh no. You recognize them?" "Immediately." "They're fake." "Worse." He looked around before lowering his voice. "They were recalled 2 years ago." Amelia's heart skipped. "Recalled? They malfunction." She swallowed hard. "Patients could die. They already have in other hospitals." She covered her mouth. "Oh my God." Mr. Lewis nodded. "If these machines are operating here." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Amelia immediately copied every serial number. "I'm taking this to the administrator." Mr. Lewis grabbed her wrist. Be careful. Why? Good people have lost their jobs asking these questions. She smiled sadly. If nobody speaks, more people get hurt, he finished. She nodded. Exactly. That evening, the chairman of the hospital board received an unexpected visitor. It was Amelia. She placed copies of every document on his desk. The elderly chairman read each page carefully. When he finally looked up, his face was grave. You've done excellent work. I wish I was wrong. So do I. She looked at him. I wanted David to discover this himself. I know. He won't listen. The chairman sighed. Power has changed him. She looked down. I still believe there's good in him. So do I. He closed the file. But whether he's innocent or guilty. He paused. Tomorrow will reveal the truth. What do you mean? The chairman picked up his phone. I've seen enough. He dialed the family's lawyer. We're calling an emergency board meeting. Amelia nodded slowly. She had hoped it wouldn't come to this. She wanted to save both the hospital and her husband. She still didn't know which one could be saved. At that same moment, Victor sat alone in his office with a satisfied grin. One of his assistants rushed in. Everything's ready. Victor smiled. Excellent. The staff meeting is tomorrow morning. And the complaints? They're already on Mr. Carter's desk. Victor leaned back comfortably. By tomorrow afternoon. He chuckled. Amelia Williams will never work in this hospital again. He had no idea that less than 24 hours later, he would be standing before the true owner of the hospital, trying desperately to explain why he had built his empire of lies on stolen lives and stolen trust. The next morning, every department head, doctor, nurse, and administrator gathered in the hospital auditorium for the monthly staff meeting. No one expected anything unusual. David stood confidently at the podium. He adjusted the microphone and looked across the room. Our hospital has always stood for discipline, professionalism, and excellence. A round of polite applause followed. Amelia sat quietly in the third row. She had barely slept. Not because she feared what might happen to her, but because she feared what continued corruption would do to innocent patients. David continued. Unfortunately, there are employees whose actions threaten the trust we've worked so hard to build. Murmurs spread across the room. Victor folded his arms, hiding a satisfied smile. David looked directly at Amelia. Nurse Amelia Williams, please come forward. Every eye turned toward her. She slowly stood and walked to the front. The silence became almost unbearable. David picked up a folder. For weeks, you've ignored protocol, spread damaging accusations against hospital leadership, interfered with internal operations, and created unnecessary panic among staff. Amelia met his eyes. I tried to protect this hospital. You tried to undermine it. I brought evidence. You brought chaos. She took a slow breath. David, please don't do this. His face remained cold. This isn't personal. Her voice trembled. It became personal the moment you stopped listening. Victor stepped forward. Sir, the staff deserves to know leadership won't tolerate insubordination. David nodded. I agree. He looked back at Amelia. Effective immediately, your employment with Carter Memorial Hospital is terminated. Gasps echoed through the auditorium. Several nurses lowered their heads. One doctor whispered, this isn't right. Security officers reluctantly approached. Amelia looked at David one last time. Are you absolutely certain? I am. She slowly removed her identification badge. Instead of handing it to security, she placed it gently on the podium. I truly hoped you would choose differently. Without another word, she walked toward the exit. Not once did she look back. The doors closed behind her. The room remained silent. For the first time since becoming administrator, David felt no satisfaction from winning. Something inside him felt strangely empty. Still, he convinced himself he had done the right thing. Less than an hour later, David received an urgent phone call. The board wants you in the executive conference room immediately. He smiled. They must have heard how decisively I handled the situation. Victor grinned. I'll come with you. When they entered the boardroom, the atmosphere felt unusually tense. Every board member was already seated. The chairman's expression was unreadable. Beside him sat the family's lawyer with several thick folders. David frowned. What's going on? The chairman simply replied. We're waiting for one more person. The conference room door opened. Everyone turned. Amelia walked in. She wasn't wearing a nurse's uniform anymore. She wore a simple navy business suit. She carried herself with the same quiet confidence she had always possessed. David laughed in disbelief. What is she doing here? The chairman stood. I believe introductions are necessary. He looked around the room before speaking clearly. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to formally introduce Ms. Amelia Williams, granddaughter of our founder and the legal majority owner of Carter Memorial Hospital. The room fell completely silent. David's smile disappeared. What? The lawyer slid several documents across the table. The ownership transfer was completed 3 years ago after the passing of Mr. Henry Williams. David stared at the papers. This can't be real. It is, the lawyer answered calmly. The transfer has been legally registered since the day it was signed. David slowly turned toward Amelia. You own the hospital? She nodded gently. My grandfather believed leadership begins with service. So you worked here? As a nurse? All this time? Yes. And you never told me. You never asked. Those words hit harder than any accusation. Victor suddenly interrupted. This changes nothing. She's still making false allegations. Amelia calmly placed another folder on the table. Actually. She opened it. It changes everything. Inside were invoices, photographs, equipment reports, serial numbers, financial records, and signed statements from technicians. Mr. Lewis entered the room. So did the manufacturer. A representative from the medical equipment company followed. We inspected the devices yesterday. He placed an official report before the board. Several machines purchased under recent contracts are counterfeit. Victor's face turned pale. The representative continued. They were falsely billed as premium equipment. The hospital's auditor stood. We've traced millions of dollars in fraudulent payments. Every trail led to Victor's department. The chairman looked at Victor. Do you have an explanation? Victor remained silent. The silence lasted only seconds before he finally lowered his head. I didn't act alone. He looked directly at David. I submitted every contract for approval. David shook his head. I trusted you. You signed every document without reading them. David couldn't deny it. He remembered every rushed signature, every meeting he had cut short, every warning he had ignored. The chairman addressed the board. Please vote. One by one, hands were raised. The motion carries. He turned to David. As of this moment, you are removed as hospital administrator. A security officer quietly stepped forward. Sir, your access card. David slowly placed it on the table. Just hours earlier, he had taken Amelia's badge. Now he surrendered his own. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Victor was escorted out to face investigators. No one applauded. There was nothing to celebrate. Lives had been placed at risk. Trust had been broken. The chairman looked at Amelia. The hospital is yours. She stood. I have only one request. Everyone listened. No employee who acted honestly should lose their job because of another person's corruption. The board unanimously agreed. She continued. We will replace every counterfeit machine immediately. Another vote. Approved. We will restore every service that was cut. Approved. We will create an anonymous reporting system so every employee can speak without fear. Approved. Finally, she turned toward David. His eyes were filled with regret. "I was wrong," he whispered. "I know. I chose pride over truth." She nodded. "You stopped seeing people." "I don't expect forgiveness," she answered softly. "Forgiveness and trust are not the same." He lowered his head. "I understand." Months later, Carter Memorial Hospital had become stronger than ever. New equipment filled every ward. Patient satisfaction reached record levels. Employees no longer feared speaking up. Amelia often walked the halls, greeting nurses, cleaners, doctors, and patients by name. She still preferred wearing a simple name badge instead of announcing her title. Respect, she believed, should never come from ownership alone. As for David, he accepted a volunteer position at a small community clinic. There were no executive offices, no applause, and no special treatment, only patients who needed compassion. Day by day, he began rebuilding the character he had once possessed. Sometimes he and Amelia would meet for coffee after work. They talked honestly. They listened. They took no shortcuts. Whether their marriage would fully heal remained uncertain, but they both understood that real change could never be forced, it had to be lived. And everyone at Carter Memorial Hospital remembered the day a quiet nurse walked out after being fired, only to return as the woman who had owned the hospital all along. If this story reminded you that true leadership is measured by humility rather than power, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more inspiring stories, and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done if you were in David's position?